Hello, my noble band of outlaws. Outlaw Samurai coming at you live with a video. Well, if any of you have ever watched Metatron's videos, he compared a katana to a Nodachi. And I was thinking about this. Katana compared to a Nodachi really isn't all that fair of a comparison if you think about it. Because the katana is a far shorter blade. The Nodachi clearly has advantages. But what if there was a much more fairer comparison? And I know Metatron did that as for entertainment, and he did make some valid points. But I'm thinking tachi versus Nodachi. We'll start with the obvious elephant in the room, their size. A lot of people hold the swords up to their guard to measure them. Not me. I hold them from the end of their total length and measure them. So from both of the kashiras of these blades, you can tell that the Nodachi is substantially longer than the tachi. Oops. Sorry about that. But with that in mind, what are the advantages and disadvantages of these two swords? Now, I know I don't have an actual Nodachi and an actual tachi to compare to, but these are both made out of the same type of wood. I made both of these myself. And, while they may not have the weight, they do have the length and the general handling of both said weaponry. So we'll start with the Nodachi. The Nodachi, as it says in the translation, is a field sword. It is a battlefield sword. It was most prominently used during the Sengoku Jidai, the Muromachi period, the Kamakura period, which the Muromachi and Kamakura periods, I believe, took place before the Sengoku Jidai or took place during the Sengoku Jidai. But one of those two, if I remember correctly. But the tachi overall, not the tachi, the Nodachi was a battlefield weapon. Its primary use was to cut out the legs of horses and fight soldiers on horseback. So I'm going to attempt to scoot back and show you this. Adjust the camera angle ever so slightly. Good thing this room has really good acoustics. I might start filming in here more often. So imagine up here we had a mounted horse archer or mounted samurai in general. Now, again, the tachi, which I will get to in a minute, is up here. And he's got his sword up here. My head is in a direct line of fire to his swing. So how do I counter this? I have a long sword that allows me to block his incoming strike and even counterattack him. So that's where the Nodachi really shined in terms of combat. It was an anti-cavalry weapon. Very much similar to how the German Zweihander was used against the Swedish pikemen during medieval warfare. The Zweihander, which is a European equivalent to the Nodachi, was used to disrupt pike formations of spearmen, and it was used against mounted cavalry. Now, you might be thinking, okay, if this sword had such prominence in battle, why wasn't it used more often? Well, here's where we get into the pros of this sword. One pro is that you can fight more opponents than if you were to just fight with a tachi or a katana. The Nodachi's length allowed you to keep your opponents at a safe distance from you, while you in turn delivered powerful cuts. And you could even fight more than one opponent at once, because if you strike one opponent over here, and you manage to cut off, like slit his throat or something in one swing. Not that that didn't actually happen. I'm pretty sure there were many instances where a Nodachi-man swung his sword and it slit the throat of a Ashigaru and light armor, basically a light armored foot soldier in Japanese society. Which Ashigaru was only one stage below samurai, and if Ashigaru proved themselves faithful enough to their lord, they could actually be bumped up a rank into the samurai class. But aside from that, what happened is you could slash one throat and using the momentum of your blade, attack another opponent. And the kinetic energy that a Nodachi can deliver, a properly weighted Nodachi, I want to say would be equivalent to being struck with a European warhammer or something of that like. Because you have a lot of kinetic energy on only a thin blade profile, and it can strike you. And I want to even say that a Nodachi could easily, like at full powered swing, cut through a yari pole, like the shaft of a yari, but let's be honest, that would require a lot of strength and precision cutting. But an extraordinarily sharp blade. But with that in mind, that's one of the pros of the Nodachi. Aside from you being able to fight equally, well, more equally with mounted cavalry, you can also fight multiple opponents at once with a longer blade. It's the same with a spear. A fully trained spearman can actually keep a extremely skilled swordsman at bay, because the best defense against a swordsman is not a bow. A lot of people think that, oh, in medieval fighting, like the bow and arrow was the bane of the swordsman because they could strike them down before they even got in range. Not quite. Bows are substantially slower than firearms, so you can dodge and or cut an arrow out of flight. And I know that sounds impossible, but historically it was done, and it's actually a test that samurai did to prove their skill. So you can cut arrows out of mid-flight and dodge them. And also, the swordsman can advance. An archer generally has to stay in place. And it takes between firing the arrow and pulling another one, knocking and firing, there's about a 1 to 2 second window where the swordsman can continuously advance. And a lot of high-speed sprinters can clear like 10 feet in a second, especially Olympic-class athletes. So to say that the bow was the bane of the sword is incorrect. However, the spear, on the other hand, is different. Because with a spear, pretend this is a spear, I can move and thrust at you like so. And a swordsman, he can't get too close. Now, with the Nodachi, this is actually a much more fair fight, because the Nodachi is a weapon of similar length. Especially if you are trained in anti-spear techniques. For example, a spearman goes to thrust his spear, you parry with the flat of your Nodachi, and you keep pushing the spear to the side while advancing. That is actually an anti-spear technique that is very useful, and it is most effective when you use a long blade, because you don't have to get as close to the spearman. So that's another pro of the Nodachi. It was also of long swords like the Nodachi. Sorry, it's hot in here. But then we get into the cons, and I'm probably overlooking a lot of the pros. of these swords. But in any case, with that in mind, the con of the Nodachi, the biggest con of this sword is the weight. Generally, a Nodachi, even properly weighted and proportioned and the weights distributed, will weigh in excess of around 5 pounds, 7 pounds. I want to say a maximum of 10 pounds, but that's more of a European weapon because of the extra weight of the cross guards, the pommel. With a Nodachi, it's mostly just the Suba, the Fuchi, the Kashira, and the Seppa, and the whole Suka core that adds the weight back here. But with that in mind, the reason I'm saying the weight is because generally tachis can get into that 5 pound range. Even, I believe there are some historical examples of a 10 pound Nodachi or an Odachi. Nodachi and Odachi are pretty much the same thing. In my opinion, a Nodachi is anywhere between 60 and 70 inches, and a Nodachi is anywhere between 70 and 74 inches. Or reverse those measurements, Odachi is 70 to 74, Nodachi is 60 to 70. So, with that in mind, the weight of the sword does get tiring. So, you can really only issue a Nodachi to your strongest foot soldier. So, with that in mind, only the beefiest, basically, you could only give these to like Dwayne The Rock Johnson. But in all seriousness, you don't have to be ripped like The Rock to use these things. But yes, they do have weight behind them, which is generally how they were able to cut the legs of horses out from underneath them. There's actually a specific Japanese sword called the Zanbato, which means horse cutting sword. Za, horse, ba, cut. No, ba means sword, and to means to cut. Horse, nope, I got those confused. Zan, horse, ba, cut, to, sword. Zanbato. And like the name says, it was designed to cut the legs out of the horses as they would riding by, because if you could knock a guy off his horse, he instantly becomes a whole of a hell of a lot easier to kill. Another con of the Nodachi is the cost. Now, in the medieval times, there's a general conception: work is cheap, the work is cheap, but the materials are expensive. And you basically, at least in medieval Europe, you lived in a society where the materials were where labor was cheap. It was mostly done by commoners and peasants, but the materials needed to do said work were expensive. And in Japanese society, very well-renowned sword makers like Masamune, Muramasa, those are the only two I know off the top of my head at this point. Sorry. They were very well-known sword makers. Masamunes are basically considered like holy swords. Basically, God's gift to man is how the Japanese bestow Masamune blades. And Muramasa, my favorite swordsmith, because he made cursed demon swords, and I like demons, was basically called Swordsmith Satan. So you had Sword God and Sword Satan, and I like both, but I have to pick Sword Satan because swords that are cursed for bloodthirst just sound a whole lot more metal than swords that don't cut anything, or at least don't cut your opponent. But aside from that, I'm rambling. Those are the cons of the Nodachi: its cost and its weight. Also, another con is making the damn thing in the first place. The longer you make a blade, the more complicated it is. Short little knives really aren't all that complicated, but as soon as you start adding feet upon inch of blade, Not only do you need more material to start out, which makes it more expensive, but you also need to start out thicker and taper down thinner and thinner, which requires a hell of a lot more skill, not to mention having a uniform polish on a blade this big. It's hard enough to polish a katana. Trust me, I've tried. It's hard enough to polish and sharpen a katana. I am man enough to admit I could never sharpen a blade like this at my current skill level worth a damn without something like a work sharp. But, yeah. So, do the cons outweigh the pros? I would say so, but if you have the skill to use this and you're trained to use this and you get a good Nodachi, it can actually be a pretty damn good weapon. Seigyo Kosaki, I think that's what his name was, the one who fought against Miyamoto Musashi, actually did use a Nodachi. He had a sword about 3 feet long, and he was well renowned for his use of the long sword. But with that in mind, I've rambled on for like 16 minutes about the Nodachi. Now it's time for the tachi sword. Now, as you can already imagine, the tachi is a significantly shorter blade. Now, the tachi, a lot of people don't know this because they haven't studied enough Japanese lore or actual history, but the tachi actually came before the katana. The katana evolved from the tachi, or if you want my opinion, downgraded. But with that in mind, the tachi is actually, back in the Sengoku era, this was the status symbol of the samurai, the tachi. The tachi was longer, heavier, and in many instances more deadly than the katana because it could deliver a far more powerful cut. The tachi also had the characteristic of having a very strong upwards curvature that extended up into the handle. Mine doesn't do that. Mine is more like a chokoto version of a tachi, which the chokoto is actually the Japanese straight sword, which is the actual ancestor to all Japanese curved swords, which all Japanese swords originally came over from China until the Japanese started to develop their own swords, and we got the tachi. But the tachi primarily is a cavalry weapon, which means it was used by samurai on horseback. Now, a few differences is that in how they are carried and or mounted. Katanas usually have the koiguchi on this side to keep from slipping out of the obi. Tachis generally don't have koiguchis. They have a very elaborate sukemaki or edo wrap or ito wrap, like on the blade, around this area with leather loops to suspend the blade from your side. I know this isn't how they suspended it, but it's close. I'm doing this to show you. They suspended it from their side and let it hang down. Another difference is that instead of holding the blade drawing the blade like so with the edge facing up, the tachi was actually worn with the edge facing down for two main reasons. One, if you're on horseback, drawing a sword like this when you're galloping on a horse and the blade is going past your head and neck is not a smart idea. You could very much kill yourself drawing your own weapon. So that's one of the reasons. Ease of use drawing on horseback, because you're drawing across the body, and with the tachi's strong curvature, the blade actually follows the natural arc of your draw, which makes it far easier to draw. Another reason why the tachi was worn blade down, as I just mentioned, it's easier to draw, and since the tachi mainly was used on the battlefield, drawing your sword from your hip like this is far faster than drawing it like this. One Mississippi. One Mississippi, two Mississippi. I know that's not a very scientific estimate, but that 2 seconds drawing the sword like this, or the 1 second drawing the sword like that. The 2 seconds drawing the sword in the katana position and the 1 second drawing the sword from the tachi position could actually save your skin. Because in battle, every second counts. Every nanosecond counts. Now, as I already said, the tachi is a smaller version. It is smaller than the big Nodachi sword. But does that mean that these two swords, if they clashed, the Nodachi would instantly win? I don't think so, and here's why I say that. It's true that the Nodachi gives you the reach advantage. And one of the pros of the tachi is that it's lighter than the Nodachi, so you won't tire out as quickly. Another pro is that I know people don't say that curved blades help in the cut unless they have an extremely curved edge, which the tachi does traditionally have that strong sori or curve. But another advantage is that the tachi can deliver powerful cuts, but it can do them in rapid succession. By the time you get 2 cuts in on the Nodachi, you could probably get, I'd say, 3 or 4 in with a tachi. So the tachi is faster, and it can hit relatively good enough to cause some damage to a Nodachi blade. But the con, as I said, it is shorter, so you could actually get severely injured fairly quickly. However, why I'm saying that the tachi wielder could defeat a Nodachi wielder is actually because of a con I mentioned earlier, the weight of the Nodachi. That is the biggest key in defeating a Nodachi user or a polearm user in general. The weight of their weapons. The weight of a Nodachi is always going to be at least twice that of a tachi sword. And hold on a moment. I don't know if that helps you or not. It does me. Like I said, the weight of a Nodachi user is always going to be about double that, the sword's weight, of the tachi. So there are 2 main reasons why I think the tachi could beat the Nodachi in this fight. The Nodachi's weight and the amount of time one can use it without tiring. Now, let's say that these 2 warriors, time for the conclusion, I know this has been dragging on for like 23 minutes, but let's say that these 2 warriors, they have to fight a duel. Both of them are equally skilled in their respective sword styles. One is the master of the tachi toryu, the tachi sword style, and one is the master of the Nodachi toryu, the Nodachi style. I'm pretty sure there are actual sword schools devoted to these 2 swords, but I don't know their names at this time. So let's say that these 2, they passed in the street and one of them insulted the other's honor. The Nodachi user called the tachi user shorty or something, referencing his short blade. And he's like, "You have insulted my honor, sir. We must fight. We must have a duel." So let's say that these 2 warriors, they consent to a duel to each other. And what happens is, they meet, they're both fully rested, everything's equal, and they fight. The Nodachi user seems to be getting the upper hand, but As the duel goes on, the tachi user realizes that, okay, this guy has a much heavier weapon, I just have to tire him out. And that's how the tachi is a better weapon to use in this situation. This is how the tachi user could win. At least this is how I would. Tire out your opponent. Your weapon is shorter, you don't have the reach or the power that your opponent's weapon has, but yours is lighter, and you can use yours for longer. So as soon as the Nodachi user starts running out of steam, the tachi user, he's still at relatively 3/4 full strength. So he can just overpower the Nodachi user and win the fight. That is how I believe the Nodachi and the tachi, in this comparison, the tachi could win the duel. Now there are multiple scenarios, of course. The Nodachi user, he could probably know, most likely he knows his own weakness, and he's like, okay, I need to end this duel quick, and just uses his brute power to overwhelm the tachi user. But that is actually how I view this fight going, these two being equally skilled and having an equal chance to basically kill each other. But if I had to pick a fight, if this was a very short duel, the Nodachi would be the one to win. But if this duel had been dragged out longer, let's say the short duel is about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and the Nodachi wins, but if this duel stretches on to like a 15-minute fight or a 20-minute fight, then the Nodachi is going to start slowing down and the tachi is going to start speeding up. So, final comparison, if it was a short, quick duel, the Nodachi, I now see can win, but if it was a longer, more dragged out duel, I have to give it to the tachi. But this is all for fun. I'm not really trying to make a really historical accuracy of these tests. This is just how I view how these two swords would fight against each other. So if you have a difference of opinion, please write down in the comments below. And I hope you've stuck around long enough to see this. So, or at least hear me ramble. So, until next time, my noble band of outlaws, Outlaw Samurai, tells all y'all, be crazy rednecks, be safe when using your weapons, and I'm out. Peace. And if you want to make your own comparison between a tachi and a Nodachi, and comment me about it. Write hashtag. There's going to be a hashtag in this video. Nodachi versus tachi. Well, I'm out. Peace.